Hey, everybody, it's Dave here and Darren over there. We're your two old bloggers. Been talking publicly about the Minnesota Vikings for over 2 decades apiece. It's been a long time, and we still are at it. What gluttons for punishment we are. Today, we have 3 themes as usual. Mr. Darren was a little bit down on Sam Darnold going into last week's game, but it didn't change his mind with the victory over the New York Giants. We'll find out. Could Sam Darnold actually be good? Then we're going to get into some of the tidbits that happened this week in Vikingsland. There's an interesting one. We got an extension to talk about. And, of course, it's game day tomorrow, so we're going to preview the home opener of your Minnesota Vikings hosting the San Francisco 49ers. All next on Two Old Bloggers. Let's rock! Vikings First and SKOL presents This Week in Vikingsland with Darren and Dave, your two old bloggers. And we're back. And I want to highlight this one question already from Skullfest. How many wins until Vikings fans give Sam Darnold the respect he deserves? But first, how are you doing, Darren?
Oh, excellent, Dave. Ripped and ready for tomorrow's game. Hoping for a good one. How about you?
Oh, I can't wait. It's going to be fun. You know the house is going to be absolutely rocking. The festivities have started already this weekend. People are gathering. Fans are gathering around different places. Skullfest is tonight down at the corner bar where a whole bunch of fans gather together and have a good time. It's going to be fantastic, and that's going to roll right into tomorrow's ceremonies. And from what I'm being told, fans need to be in the seats at least 15 minutes early because the video people at U.S. Bank and in conjunction with the Vikings have something special planned. I wish I could watch it, but those that are there, let's hear from you tomorrow and tell us how it went.
Sal Spice going to be on the job tomorrow.
She will be out there. She's got to be out there at 6:00 in the morning to open up her tailgating spot. So it's going to be interesting, but she's going to have fun.
Yes.
All right, now on to theme 1. Could Sam Darnold be good?
Yes, Dave. I guess last week my concerns, my fears that Sam Darnold was going to crap the bed turned out to be completely unfounded against the Giants. As we know, goes in there on the road in MetLife Stadium. He's completes his first 12 passes as a Viking. Awesome. He goes in the game. He goes 19 for 24, 208 yards, 2 TDs, 1 interception on when his arm was hit. Really no throws put in harm's way at all. Had a quarterback rating of 113.2, which is very good. QBR of 81, which is very good. Was Pro Football Focus's top graded quarterback of the week, which is very, very good, whether you like Pro Football Focus or not. So, a lot of great, just a very good outing for Sam Darnold. Dave's trying to zoom out.
Wonderful AI cameras.
Yeah. So, Darnold, you could, as a Vikings fan, you could have no critiques, I think, about how he played. A really great performance by him in his first game. And, I think there was some encouraging signs there that this Sam Darnold in 2024, it could be better than the one we've seen in previous years, particularly with the New York Jets and the Carolina Panthers, where he really struggled. And I think some of the encouraging signs were, now granted, Christian Darrisaw and Brian ONeal pitched pretty much a complete shutout on the edges last week, and they made Kayvon Thibodeau and Brian Burns completely non-factors, which really helped Sam Darnold a lot, feeling comfy and in the pocket. But the pocket wasn't always clean, particularly on the inside. Dexter Lawrence gave the Vikings interior a lot of trouble.
Sexy
Dexy. A sack on his own. Sexy Dexy. So there were times when the pocket was muddy. It was not clean. But I think overall, even when that happened, Sam Darnold was, very, I think, calm and decisive in the pocket. When he was in there, he made throws on time. They were accurate and they were in rhythm, just like you'd like to see. He looked in complete command of the offense, which was a great thing to see for a guy who's only been with the team for, about 5.5 months or whatever. That was encouraging. I also thought was encouraging was the fact that he handled some adversity very early on well. His first drive in a regular season game as a Minnesota Viking couldn't have gone much worse. Not all his fault, but first drive, Aaron Jones gets a 1-yard run on first down. Second down, he gets sacked by Dexter Lawrence. Third down, I think it was a 3rd and 16, played it safe, little check down to C.J. Ham, and then he watches C.J. Ham fumble the ball. The Giants recover at the 21-yard line. It's looking bad early on for the Vikings. Darnold trots off the field, but the defense holds them to a field goal. And when they get the ball back, what does Sam Darnold do in the Vikings offense? 5 yards, 65 plays, 65-yard touchdown drive to give the Vikings a lead that they never gave back. And then how about his second drive? In that, when he gets the ball back again, his second drive, pinned at the 1-yard line, takes him 99 yards, throws a beautifully placed dart to Justin Jefferson for 44 yards. Then on 4th and 2, real pressure down, he throws another dart, a laser, into Jefferson on a tightly contested catch. And JJ comes down with it. The ball was well placed by Darnold, gives them a 14-3 lead. They never look back from there. So I think
that particular touchdown catch, I don't know if you've seen the replays of it. The defender, when JJ was coming around to catch the ball like this, the defender grabbed his right hand and pushed it out of the way, and JJ caught it with his left before he brought his right arm. This is a little bit later in the catch. It's just, JJ is so good. So good.
And he was covered by Deonte Banks on that play, who's the second-year corner and the Giants' best corner, which isn't saying much, but Banks had good coverage on there, but the ball was thrown right where it needed to be, and JJ made an incredible catch. Wasn't really mentioned too much at the time, but so 14 of those 2 drives, under quite a bit of adversity, he just did, I think handled it really, really well. That I think that was a very encouraging sign as well. If you're looking at, just a couple other things, I think is, and on that second drive, he went 7 for 7 on that drive. So again, looked in complete command of the offense most of the game. And as good as those signs are, I was listening to the O-line committee podcast with former Vikings offensive lineman Alex Boone and Jeremiah Searles, hosted by Phil Mackey. If you don't listen to it, you should. It's an excellent podcast. And it's not just Viking-centric, though, so just a heads up on that. But they did talk about Sam Darnold. Both Boone and Searles are, like myself, are Darnold doubters, but they admitted that, hey, he played very well in that game, while also pointing out that it was the Giants, and they still have to see more from him in those gotta-have-it moments, in those gotta-have-it games. Searles pointed out that, the big criticism with Darnold for him has been that when things get tight in a game, he tends to wilt, which is the same criticism we've heard about Kirk Cousins the whole time he was with the Vikings, right? So, but we don't have that problem anymore. But, it's a good point. They want to see more from Darnold. A lot of people do. So do I. And obviously tomorrow, the 49ers game is that next test. It's going to be a much stiffer test than the Giants. I think we're going to learn a lot more about how good, if what we saw last week against the Giants, if that was just a 1 week thing against a poor team, or whether Sam Darnold really is in the right situation and can be so much better because he's got weapons to throw to. He's got running backs who he can hand off the ball to, and they're going to get positive gains in explosive games. He's got an offensive line that can keep him upright and not have him running for his life the entire game. We're going to learn a lot more about Sam Darnold tomorrow. And I think even if he just plays solid tomorrow against the 49ers, I think that's going to be a great sign for Darnold and the Vikings. And I think that will give us more evidence beyond the Giants game that the Sam Darnold experiment could very well work in Minnesota. And he is the right guy, even with JJ McCarthy down for the year. And we all wanted to see JJ play this year and play well, but that he's the right guy for this job in Minnesota for 2024. So tomorrow I think is a really big game and a big test, a big game for Darnold. And we're going to see what he's got. And not against the league dregs, but against the NFC champions last year, who still look like a very, very, very tough out in 2024.
I would consider them and the Lions as the two premier teams in the NFC, or the two Super Bowl contenders as of right now, is San Francisco and Detroit. And that's it. There's not anybody that's close, I don't think. So it's going to be a heck of a test. That's for sure. Can't wait. I see people are at the SKOL Mafia is at the corner bar now, and Skullfest is about to get underway. Please extend our hearty skulls on behalf of Vikings First and SKOL to the group out there, if you don't mind, Mafia. So, appreciate it. All right, that brings us to Theme 2. This week in Vikingsland.
Going to touch on some of the developments that happened with the Minnesota Vikings this week in our regular segment. And first one we're going to talk about is the Harrison Phillips extension. Found out this week he signed a 2-year extension for $15 million. $13.1 million of that is guaranteed. Not bad work if you can get it. It lowers the good news is it lowers his salary cap by about $3.35 million for 2024. The other side of that coin is that it raises his cap over the next in 2025 and 2026 to $9.2 million. So I guess, when a deal like this is made, the question that does come out of it is that a little rich for a player like Harrison Phillips, who is not, he doesn't give you much as a pass rusher. He's got 7 career sacks in the NFL, never had more than 3 in a season, which came last year as a Viking when he also had career high in snaps. But we know, Vikings fans know, Dave, that the sacks isn't the way to measure Harrison Phillips' value as a football player. He's a wide body. He's a space eater. He's a guy who's occupying blocks so that his teammates can make plays, while occasionally he'll make the odd play as well, like last week when he got a sack against the Giants. So
thank you, Biggs.
And that's the kind of guy that Harrison Phillips is. He's not a pass rush specialist, and so Tyler Forness talked about this and tweeted last week when this week when the extension was announced that he felt that the Kwesi Adofo-Mensah got a steal signing Harrison Phillips to the deal that he did. He felt he could have. He was expecting it might be for more years and for more money. It didn't turn out to be that way. So for me, looking at it, Dave, Harrison Phillips he's a player every NFL team needs. Solid. No, he's not a superstar, but he's solid. He always plays. He's yet to miss a game since he came to Minnesota over 2 seasons ago. He plays his role well, and he won't break the bank while you've got him on your team. And so, that is a player I think that's very valuable. A comp to him, I think, if you want to look at contracts and how much he signed and whether that was a reasonable deal or not, would be this guy from the Patriots, Devon Godchaux, who in July signed a 3-year deal or 2-year extension for $18 million, 16.5 guaranteed. Same type of player, nose tackle, big wide body, offers nothing as a pass rusher, 5.5 career sacks for him. And yet the Patriots are paying him slightly more than Phillips, and he's 13 months older than Phillips. So I think this is a very reasonable, good move by Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and the Vikings. They lock up a key player for them on the defensive line where they are not chock full of talent, by the way. And he's a locker room leader, which is important. He's durable, and Brian Flores loves him. So they locked him up, and I think that for the length of the extension, which is only 2 years, not too much, I don't think that Harrison Phillips' performance on the field will fall off a cliff during this point either, because he'll be 30 when the extension is the last year.
December of that, yes. And being a big round belly on both sides of the ball, they age more gracefully than other positions. And by gracefully, I mean they usually last into their 30s and close to mid-30s and still being productive. So I thought it was a good deal. I think he took a lower deal because he wants to be here in Minnesota. His family loves it. He loves it. He was willing not to gamble on this season. I think, hey, when a player wants to do that, take advantage of it. That's a good thing.
Yeah, it just creates even more certainty about what the salary cap's going to be next year that the Vikings have to work with and the year beyond. And I think, which is always the risk with these guys that are coming into a contract year, Dave, is that if the Vikings as a team had a strong season and Phillips was seen as being a key player to that strong season, the price, as you mentioned, is going to go up in the offseason for him. He's going to have more suitors for his services, which is going to drive the price up, and his agent is going to be demanding more money for those services. So getting him now at the price they did, like you said, for what he does for the Vikings, I think it's a good deal.
Mm-hmm. Now, I do want to address Big Rail and Dad gave us a $1.99 super chat, and we appreciate that, Biggs. He asked, is this the year Addison is hurt all year? And hopefully that isn't the case. It just popped out before I went on a show, just saw a tweet that the individual, the linebacker, Masao from last week, along with another one, were fined because that was done on a hip drop tackle, and it injured Jordan Addison. We'll find out how quickly his ankles heal. Like I said previous in the week, there's always tape. Tape the heck out of them. But, all right.
It's true.
Brings us to the next little bit.
Injury for sure.
Uh-huh.
Yes. Well, talking about Harrison Phillips' extensions got me thinking about other extensions, and that Kwesi Adofo-Mensah in the past few months has been busy with the extensions. Justin Jefferson signed a massive one. He got Christian Darrisaw signed a massive one. He just restructured TJ Hawkinson's contract about a week ago so that they could save salary cap space for this season. And now he signed Harrison Phillips for an extension. So it got me, the question becomes, are there any other extensions that could be in the offing or the Vikings should be looking at? And one that's been brought up before, and I think is pretty obvious, is free safety Cam Bynum, who's in the last year of his rookie contract. And would the Vikings be looking at signing him to extension? He's earning $3.1 million right now in the last year of his 4-year rookie deal. So he's clearly outperformed that contract. So are the Vikings, would they consider signing the 3-year starter at safety, a valuable player on a defense that looks like is going to be really good this year, to an extension to keep him a Viking for beyond 2024, like they just did with Harrison Phillips? Well, it gets a bit tricky because, Dave, because a guy called Julian Love, who plays a safety with the Seattle Seahawks, he might be a comp to what Bynum is looking for. In July, he signed a 3-year extension for $33 million. $18 million of that was guaranteed, and that's pretty pricey for a safety. But Cam Bynum's team, I think, will be looking at that and saying that's what we would like, and maybe a bit more. So this comes down to, do the Vikings value Bynum enough that they would sign him to something similar? You have to remember, or it's a tough question because they do have Theo Jackson backing up Bynum right now, who's a very good player, probably could start for a lot of NFL teams now, including the Vikings, if they didn't have Josh Metellus, Harrison Smith, and Cam Bynum already in the lineup. So something to monitor, and the Vikings are going to have to make a decision about Cam Bynum at some point in time, whether it's at the end of the season or before that, and whether they want to sign him to an extension, how much they're willing to sign him for. So something to track, I think.
Mm-hmm. And Big Rail and Dad had a question about when TJ comes back, which player's out. Big Rail and Dad, we could go, like Northfield says, Muse probably. I have no idea. It's how they want to move people around on the roster, and it'll be the bottom end. They'll regurgitate somebody off that end and shove him in, whether it's a tight end or not. That's generally what we assume, but who knows what it is. We'll find out.
We will. I would say Muse would be, like you said, is the obvious one. With Hawkins and back, you still have Munt and Oliver behind him, and those are dependable guys who play a lot of snaps anyway. So what role would Muse have if you kept him on the roster, even when you brought Hawkinson back? He probably wouldn't have a role.
Special teams, that's about it.
Special teams, but he didn't even play that much on special teams last week. So I think he had 6 special team snaps or something like that. So yeah, I would say it would be Muse, but you're right. Maybe they would choose to drop McLaughlin from I don't think they would, but it's possible.
Some other bottom end guy off the roster. We'll find out when they do it. And who knows, somebody could be injured again or for the first time by then. And we don't know.
Yeah. It is football.
Mm-hmm. Now, the next topic you wanted to cover was this one.
Well, you sent me this slide earlier in the week, Dave, which I found very interesting, looking at explosive plays. And the Vikings were up at the top in explosive plays last week. And in week 1, they had 8, which tied them for Jacksonville, as everybody can see up there, for second most explosive plays in the NFL, just behind the 49ers, who we play tomorrow, and the Green Bay Packers, who suck hard.
Yeah, their explosive play was a knee. Anyway, so
we joke. But yeah, very interesting. Now the top 4 teams in explosive plays, and explosive plays, by the way, if you can't read it, as judged by this chart, is a run of 10 yards or more, or a pass play of 20 yards or more. The Vikings had 8 of them last week. And now the top 4 teams only went 2-2 in the regular season games. But if you look at that chart and you see the top 12 teams that had 6 or more explosive plays, they won 9 of the 12 games last week, or 75%. And so explosive plays correlate to winning. At least in this case, week 1, it looked like it. And you hear, this is a great thing for the Vikings. You hear coaches talking all the time about the need to get explosive plays and prevent them in order to be a successful NFL team. And so another thing to track here, because was this just a 1-week aberration, or are the Vikings under Kevin O'Connell, with all the weapons they have and a new quarterback and Sam Darnold, is this going to be kind of the norm for them? Is this going to be part of their offensive identity, where they're continually dialing up and hitting on big explosive plays? And that explosive play chart does not include the pass interference penalty that Jordan Addison got in the first quarter for the Vikings, which would be another explosive play, really, even though they can't count it because no catch was made. But it was a big 30-plus yard gain for the Vikings and set them up in scoring position during a time of the game when they were down 3-0, so it was a very important play.
I agree. They should count those as an explosive play by penalty. Give it its own category. And it's because there's a lot of wide receivers that'll do it. If a pass is thrown short, they'll try to go back through the the corner, the safety, and go, oh, I was interfered. Whistle blows, flag flies, and it's, first down. So, who knows? I thought it was an interesting chart. And I know how much Kevin O'Connell talks about explosive plays and how he wants to maximize explosive plays. It's a good start. It's a really, really good start. We'll see how he does this weekend, but it's a good start.
Sure was. Our final little tidbit we're going to get to is this week. I just happened to log on to Jason Fitzgerald's excellent Over the Cap website, and he had a post about roster turnover in 2024, where he was looking at all 32 NFL teams and looking at how much their rosters turned over in 2024 compared to what their rosters were like in 2023. And he included both the practice squads in that calculation, as well as not including the practice squad calculations. Now, you would expect that in this, the teams that did very well last year would not have as much roster turnover as the teams who didn't do very well last year. And if you checking out this article, that turned out to be the case. The Commies and the Panthers are both right at the bottom, 31 and 32 respectively, as far as having the most roster turnover. They were the worst teams in the NFL last year, so they have turned over the roster, a lot of roster churn. Not surprising. Meanwhile, teams like the Packers, the Browns, various others, the 49ers, and those teams were the Chiefs. Though they were up at the top for having the least amount of roster turnover. Again, not surprising. Guess who was very, very near the bottom? Your Minnesota Vikings, David. Mm-hmm. Even though they went 7-10 last year and were in the playoffs, in the thick of it for the playoff run for the pretty much the entire season, late into the year, they have a heavy roster turnover this year compared to 2023. If you include the salary cap guys, they had the fourth most roster turnover this year at 58. They only are bringing it back. They have only brought back 58.1% of the roster compared to 2023. If you don't include the practice squad guys, they were tied for fifth for having brought back the least amount of the roster compared to 2023 at 56.5%. Now, I bring this up because remember back when Mike Zimmer and Rick Spielman got fired at the end of the 2021 season, Dave, and the Vikings, the Wilfs were looking for replacements for both, and fans like us the debate was, okay, do they tear the team down, do a complete rebuild, like vastly change over the roster, or would they be better just to keep the core and make a few tweaks? Well, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, who got hired as general manager and then hired Kevin O'Connell as the head coach, they quickly got told by Mark and Ziggy Wilf that no, you will not tear the roster down to the studs. You have to keep it competitive while also building a contender for the future. And that led to Kwesi Adofo-Mensah coming up with the term competitive rebuild, which everybody started joking about and still do to this day. But all jokes aside, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and Kevin O'Connell have been able to keep the Vikings competitive. They won the NFC North in 2022. Last year, again, despite starting 4 different quarterbacks and losing Kirk Cousins, their starter, midway through the season, they went until the last game of the year still in playoff contention. Didn't happen, but they were competitive. And I think but what the Over the Cap post really shows is that it's something that I didn't even realize, is that even while keeping them competitive, Kwesi Adofo-Mensah is rebuilding the roster significantly. The Vikings roster is very different this year compared to 2023, significantly different, and even more significantly different than it was in 2022. The Vikings have moved on in the past 2 years. They've moved on from a whole bunch of players from the Zimmer Spielman era, from stars like Adam Thielen and Danielle Hunter and Kirk Cousins, to even the lesser guys like a DJ Wanham or a Cam Dantzler or KJ Osborne. All of those guys are gone, and many more. And I think, the Vikings are rebuilding. Like the competitive part, just I think they're doing that, but they are rebuilding the roster and bringing in their guys. And it wasn't so as drastic. It's been a bit gradual, but still over 2 years, they've done quite a bit of work there. And then I wanted to point that out.
Yeah, and I want to say that first year, 2022, they were told to keep everybody. We want to see if it's the players or if it was Zim and Spielman. And so they kept most everybody. And, of course, they went 13-3, won all those one-score games. It was a magical season. And then the next year, they're like, okay. And I think that's when the rebuild started in earnest, and it's lasted these 2 years. And it generally takes 3. That's why I said next year, 2025, I think is the finishing touches that we're going to get most of. And we'll see then how it goes. That, the first 2022 year was the gimme. We'll keep it so we can the test. And then the rebuild has started, and we've done 2 years worth of rebuild. Next year will be the third, and I think you will have the majority of the roster completely turned over. We're close to it right now, with the exception, of a handful of players. So I think now they're getting to do what they want. Let's see if they remain competitive. That's the challenge this year.
Yes.
Can they do that? All right, good. This week in Vikingsland. Now on to Theme 3. The game, Vikings versus 49ers, the season opener.
Game preview, Dave. But before we get to Dave Stefano's world-famous 2 old blogger slides, or maybe you don't have any this week. Oh, boy.
Didn't have time.
Blame me, folks. Blame me.
I should have worked on them during the week, but I didn't. It's been a busy week.
Well,
do you realize that this is the 11th or 12th show that's gone out on Vikings First, 12th, I want to say, gone out on Vikings First and SKOL this week?
I didn't know it was that many, but
yep.
That's
you
what
gotta
happens
remember
when you bring on talent.
Yeah.
Right?
You got to remember, not everything is on the YouTube side. And we appreciate everybody that's joined us today and, that's there watching and chatting like Big Rail and Dad, Nick and Norsevius and everybody else. We really do appreciate that very, very much. But we do have shows that come out podcast only. And we've had a few of those this week, including Sal Spice's first show. It was a podcast only. We get Justin Day. His shows are podcast only. I do an occasional podcast only. There was one this morning that I dropped talking about the injury report we got yesterday. And then we're going to touch on that a little bit later. But you've got to be able to, be able to do both. And what's nice about the podcast when you're not watching the live show is that you could be, going out and fixing pancakes or taking the wife out or having a good time or whatever it is, or at work or ignoring the wife or however you want to do it. And you can listen to us. And it's different stuff. So I encourage you to do both. Not only subscribe to Vikings First and SKOL YouTube, but to Vikings First and SKOL on your favorite podcast aggregator. Then you'll get everything.
Plug of the week by David Stefano. But yeah, we'll get to the great stuff, Dave. Good to let the viewers know about the content we have on First and SKOL and the avenues they can do to get that content. Before we go into the game preview, I wanted to go into the Vikings Vault history just briefly. And because I look at, when we play various teams, I often kind of look at the games that have been played in the past, because sometimes there's some wonky streaks that show up. Like until the Vikings beat Miami 2 years ago, we hadn't won there since 1976. And
our last Super Bowl year.
Yeah. And so this week, the 49ers are coming to Minnesota. And do you know when was the last time that the 49ers have beaten the Vikings in Minnesota?
Well, I know we've beaten them 7 games in a row up here. But tell us, what year was it?
It was the 49ers have not beaten the Vikings in Minnesota since December 13th, 1992. So almost 32 years have gone by. Now, they're not divisional in the same division, so they don't play all the time as much as we would. So that only is a 7-game, as you mentioned, a 7-game stretch. But still, 7 games. The last time they beat us in Minnesota, Dennis Green was the head coach. Tony Dungy was our defensive coordinator, the Hall of Famer. Carl Lee was still playing cornerback for the Vikings. Our middle linebacker was future head coach and defensive coordinator Jack Del Rio. And get this, the defensive line in that game when we played the 49ers, check this out, was Al Noga, Chris Dolman, Henry Thomas, and John Randall. That's a hell of an defensive line, man. 2 Hall of Famers. Henry Thomas was no slouch himself, and Al Noga had some really good years early on for the Vikings too. They got 6 sacks that day against the 49ers, but they didn't win. They lost 20-17. And guess who the quarterbacks were that day for the Vikings, for both teams? Hall of Famer Steve Young was quarterback for the 49ers, and Rich Gannon was our quarterback. Unfortunately, it was the Rich Gannon before he got good. and Gannon was terrible in that game. He went 9 for 21, 102 yards, threw an interception. The Vikings scored a touchdown on old Audrey McMillan. He returned a pick 6, 51 yards in that one off of Steve Young for one of our touchdowns. Terry Allen, the running back, got a 1-yard plunge for the other touchdown. But I hope Sam Darnold doesn't have a game like that tomorrow against the 49ers, because if he does, we aren't going to lose by 3 points like we did in 1992. We might lose by 30 or more. But it's been a while. Is tomorrow the day the 49ers break that streak?
Oh, let's hope not.
Let's hope not. But so that was the Viking Vault, little detour there into history. But let's get to the game preview. And the big thing is injuries. Unfortunately. And Christian McCaffrey is not playing tomorrow. Jordan Addison is not playing tomorrow. And then Harrison Smith, Brian O'Neill, and Ed Ingram showed up on their injury report real late last year. And now they're listed as questionable, which means they're 50-50 whether they play or not. But McCaffrey is obviously a huge loss for the 49ers. Addison is a huge loss to the Vikings offense. And if those 3 other guys are gone, that's a huge loss for the Vikings. And so really, if all of those players do not play tomorrow, this game might hinge on how well their replacements play in place of them, I think. And yeah, sure, particularly when you look at O'Neill and Ingram and Harrison Smith. I mean, that if they can't play and you got Jordan Addison that doesn't play, Dave, that's 4 starters that are gone from the Vikings. Maybe you get away with that if you're playing the Giants or the Commies or the Panthers, but against the NFC North champions, maybe that's going to be a bit tougher. So injuries are going to be a huge story in this one. They already are. And we just hope that O'Neill, Smith, and even Ed Ingram can answer the call tomorrow, and that they're healthy enough that they can play well. So, that's the big one. But beyond the injuries, I think there's about 5 kind of key things that I think that the Vikings have to do in order to win this one. The first one is tackle well.
Always.
And yes, always. And they did that well against the Giants Sunday. It's one of the reasons they were successful. But the 49ers are a different beast. They thrive on yards after the catch. Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, that's how they make their living, really, in the past. And then the running backs are great at creating yards after contact. So the Vikings are going to be really important that on first contact by Vikings of said 49er ball carrier, that they bring them down on first contact. Don't allow a 3-yard rush to turn into an 8-yard rush. Don't allow a 5-yard pass to turn into a 15-yard pass. That's going to be very important. And if the Vikings can do that, then I think they're going to be in pretty good shape in this one. And this is we don't often talk about guys like Phillips Jonathan Bullard, Jerry Tillery, Blake Cashman, those kind of guys. But I think they're going to be key in this game because they're going to be responsible for preventing, making some of those tackles, allowing other players to make the tackles, making sure there's not big, wide, gaping holes for that Mason kid to run through like he had Monday night against the Jets. So very important, tackle well tomorrow, as always, but even more important when you're playing the San Francisco 49ers. I think the second thing the Vikings got to do well is with Aaron Jones in particular. They got to do what they did last Sunday against the Giants and run effectively. We ran 26 times against the Giants on Sunday. We actually ran more than we passed. I think that might have been the first time ever in the Kevin O'Connell era that we've done that. 26 times, 111 yards, which doesn't sound like a lot, but we only had 3 negative runs, Dave. And 2 of those were on the second last drive of the game when we were running out the clock. There was 4 minutes left. The Giants knew we were running it. We didn't care. So really, I think we only had 1 negative run. And that's important because negative runs, if you have too many of them, they're like a sack. They're drive killers. We did not have that against the Giants, and it's going to be important to not have that tomorrow against the 49ers. And Aaron Jones he's going to have to be at his elusive, slithery, tough running best tomorrow against a very fast and physical San Francisco 49ers defense because sometimes the holes aren't going to be there, or the holes are going to be very, very minimal, and he's going to have to see them and recognize them. And Aaron Jones is great at that. We've seen him do that against us a number of times. We saw it last week against the Giants. So as great as he is, he's going to have to be even greater tomorrow because I don't think Kevin O'Connell wants to have Sam Darnold throw 35, 40 times a game tomorrow and have the game all on his shoulders. I think he wants the game to be partly on Aaron Jones' shoulders and maybe a bit on Ty Chandler, who wasn't as effective as Aaron Jones last week, but then he only got 7 carries. But so really important that Aaron Jones in particular, the Vikings running game is going, it's effective, and we aren't having those drive-killing negative gains that we got so used to last year and the year before and the year before that.
Mm-hmm.
Third important thing, got to get Justin Jefferson a bit more involved. Now, he didn't have a bad game last week, Dave. 4 catches, 59 yards. He had that 44-yarder, which was a great catch. He caught a really tough contested catch for a touchdown for 2 yards to give us the 14-3 lead. So he just wasn't utilized very much last week. He didn't have to be. But just the 6 targets last week, Dave, for Justin Jefferson, that's, except for last year when he played against Kansas City and Las Vegas. And in both of those games, he got injured early and left the game. 6 targets is by far the least he's had in a game, would have been the least he'd had in a game in 2023. So you don't have TJ Hawkinson. You don't have Jordan Addison tomorrow. If you're going to move the ball through the air, Justin Jefferson, even if he's triple covered, he's got to be more involved, and the Vikings have got to get him the ball more and create some explosive plays with him. So if he gets shut down, I don't really know how the Vikings are going to move the ball through the air.
Well, that's where we may have a little bit of an advantage because the starting strong safety, Huafunga, is listed as doubtful. And doubtful usually means 75% chance that he's not playing. And their backup guy, Odom, JJ should be able to take advantage of.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe we can hope a little bit, but we'll see.
Yeah. I think Jefferson has to have a big game in this one and help Darnold out quite a bit. We know that Naylor's going to get more snaps. Brandon Powell's going to get more snaps. Tristan Jackson will probably be activated. Can they be factors? We're not sure, but damn sure got to have Justin Jefferson as a huge factor in this one.
Tristan was activated. That was announced yesterday. And then today, the Vikings announced they're elevating Myles Gaskin for a second week and defensive lineman Jonah Williams.
Looking for a bit more beef, it appears, on the defensive line. So those are 3. A couple of more things I think are important. I think 4 is Brian ONeal / David Quisenberry. They have to not lose the battle against Nick Bosa tomorrow in that 49ers game. Now, might be saying, well, doesn't Darrisaw have Bosa? Well, I read this week that Bosa actually they switch him, but he spends 80% of his time on the left side of the defensive line, which means his helmet's going to be lining up on the right tackle. So really Brian ONeal, if he's playing, is going to be the guy who's blocking Bosa most of the time in that game. And if he plays, right now he's questionable, he's got to win that battle. Last week, he obliterated Thibodeau and Burns, whoever he was up against. They didn't get anywhere near
I want to say Burns most of the time on the right side, and just annihilated him.
Yeah. It's unlike Nick Bosa is a totally different beast, though. Like Burns is good, but Bosa is one of the best, and he can be a game wrecker and wreck your passing game every single down. So you've got to negate him or at least hold him to a stalemate. I think ONeal's capable, but if he's banged up a bit and playing and not 100%, that is going to, I think, that could be a factor in how effective he is. If he doesn't play, I am assuming Quisenberry would be his replacement because he's a swing tackle, the most experienced tackle we have on the roster right now. And, I like Quisenberry. When he's had to play last year, I thought he was pretty solid. But he's not Brian ONeal. But if he's in there, he's got to at least keep Bosa to a stalemate and not allow Bosa to dominate the game and terrorize Sam Darnold to the point where Darnold has no time to throw the ball to Justin Jefferson and all those other guys. So this is a big matchup. Yeah, Leonard Floyd's a good player. He seems to get better as he gets older. But I think that Darrisaw, who will be handling him, can handle Leonard Floyd most of the time.
But I think Darrisaw can handle just about anybody in the league.
Yes, but Bosa is going to be tougher than Leonard Floyd, and Darrisaw is not going to probably not be lined up and blocking Bosa most of the time. Somebody else is. It's going to be either ONeal or Quisenberry. They've got to win that battle, or at least not lose it.
Yeah, and ONeal's was listed as an elbow, which is interesting. The one I worry about is Ed Ingram. Ed Ingram was listed as a tricep, and that happened on Friday. Yeah, when he supposedly hurt himself. And of course, Kevin O'Connell talked about, it's nothing, right? It's just minor, nothing to worry about. And anytime I hear coach speak, it's, oh my God, what happened? Does he need to go to the hospital? Is he going to lose his arm? All that sort of stuff rolls through my head. But we'll find out, because if I trust Quisenberry more backing up ONeal than I do if Ingram's out. That means either Feeney or Juergens gets moved into his position. And then I think there's a real deficit at that point on that right side. But we'll find out. And then, of course, Hitman, I'm not so much worried if Hitman is actually out, and I don't think he will be. Supposedly a hip. I think Hitman was more of an extended, I'm going to take a break this week, coach. My hip hurts a little bit, so write it up as a hip, and he'll come in and play. I'm not worried about that on the injury list, but it's going to be interesting. We want and hopefully need the entire offensive line firing on all cylinders, both in the run and the pass game, so we could take advantage of the Niners and beat them for an 8th time in a row in Minnesota.
That would be nice. Big Rail Dad talked about how, with the ONeal Quisenberry situation blocking Bosa, that's when you move Oliver on their side to give them some help. And that's a great point. Although I think they're going to do that less if ONeal is in the game and they feel he's at pretty much 100% health, because ONeal doesn't need a whole lot of that help, I think. But if Quisenberry gets in there, I think that's maybe more where Oliver's on that side to chip and help out a bit. But we will see who plays and how they react to things for sure. Last thing I want to touch on as far as what I think the Vikings have to do well in order to win this one is the guy here, Sam Darnold, can't stink. It's that simple. He played very well against the Giants, but the Giants are not the 49ers. We know that. Everybody knows that. So this is a game where things are going to be much more difficult. He won't have, we hope he'll have a lot of time to throw the ball, but it's likely going to be the case that he'll be pressured a fair bit more in this game and under duress more in this game than he was against the Giants. And he's got to be able to handle that and still throw the ball accurately and on time and get it to his guys in a position where they can make plays and not get flustered and frustrated and make bad decisions. He made great decisions against the Giants, but 49ers defense, again, is a much better unit, and they're going to make things tougher on Darnold. Darnold played for 49ers last year, of course, so he saw the defense. Maybe that'll help. Now, they also saw him daily, so they kind of know his tendencies too, what he's good at, what he isn't. I don't know if that'll be a big factor at all, but I expect that they're going to test Darnold's mental fortitude and try to get him as flustered as possible. And we'll have to see how Sam reacts to that. If he even has a solid game, Dave, the Vikings are going to be. That'll be the difference between this being a game that we can win and one where we lose by 2 scores or more. And if he has a solid game and the Vikings don't win it, although I hope that they do, I think that'll be a very encouraging sign for the Vikings and Sam Darnold, because if he can play well against the 49ers defense, who can he play well against?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if he can. Now, there's one more factor in this you haven't talked about. Both head coaches are best friends.
Yeah.
They both know each other's thinking really, really well. So that's going to be interesting how that works out. I look forward to that sort of chess match. What's your prediction?
Well, my prediction is that I'm not optimistic about us winning. I think it's going to be 28-20 for the 49ers. Boo, yeah. Now, but again, last year, the Vikings, nobody thought they were going to win this game this year. Nobody thought they were going to win the game last year. But last year, the Vikings played the best game I think they'd played since 2019, considering the opponent that they had. They came out, the defense was solid all the game. A little leaky on the pass defense, but that was a problem all year. They ran the ball surprisingly well in the first half, not so much in the second half, but that got the offense going and kept them multidimensional. Kirk Cousins played one of the best games I've ever seen him play. He made a ton of tough throws under duress in that one. And the Vikings were the better team in that game. They should have won by more than they did. And that was a great game to watch, and it set the 49ers on a bit of a tailspin, because after they lost that one, they lost a few more. And they went from the almost undisputed best team in the NFL to then people are starting to talk about Brock Purdy and is he any good and all that sort of stuff. So I'd love to see a similar performance tomorrow. I just can't quite get there.
Okay, I'd seen that the line has moved and it's down to now. I think the last I saw, which was yesterday, was 5.5 points. We're underdogs instead of we were all the way up to 7, I think, at one point.
Yeah,
I believe that because they are home, because they like it. Aaron Jones this week in his press conference talked about, I can't wait to hear the Skol Chat and be on this side of it. And he was all excited. I think that's going to pump up those players, those especially new to the team. Sam Darnold's one of them. Yeah. That the vibes from the fans into the stadium are going to be big. Now, from what I gather, 35% supposedly of the seats have been sold to Niners fans.
They had a big contingent there last year too.
And I hope not. And they're like the Packers fans, and it's just, I understand season ticket holders trying to make up their season ticket costs in 1 or 2 games. But I do hope the purple absolutely rocks tomorrow. And I disagree with you. I think the Vikings are going to pull this one out, and we're going to be a surprise 2-2 or 2-0. And the national media is going to go, whoa, it wasn't just the Giants.
Mm-hmm. I hope you're right, Dave, because tomorrow a loss wouldn't be a backbreaker by any stretch. No. But then you got Houston coming up next, and so then you got to kind of win that game, or else the great vibes from the first week get forgotten pretty quickly. So beating the 49ers tomorrow would be would be unexpected, at least to a lot of people. And
Vegas,
it would be
for sure.
It's the whole thing about, stacking those wins that you aren't expected to win just helps get you into the playoffs and builds that confidence. And, you build up that bank account, right? With W's, and that's what we want.
Yep, absolutely.
They're probably going to lose a game this year, and maybe more than a game. But the more wins they can
bank, the better it is.
Better it is.
And I love Aaron with the pun. Not going to be Purdy for the Niners tomorrow. I agree, buddy. I agree. So I think it's going to be good. We want to bank them up. Now, when the professional quarterback from the team from Wisconsin had his knee popped, their odds dropped to equal ours for winning the division. I would like theirs to continue to drop and ours to go up. And I think tomorrow's a good start. We're going to see.
Yeah.
Hopefully everybody comes in healthy. All those questionables come in healthy, and they just dominate. And we have a great game, and everybody's going to be talking, whoa, we mischaracterized the team from Minnesota. Any final words there, buddy?
Well, you talk about winning at home, and I think the last year the Vikings went 2-6 at home, so which would have been their worst home record in a long, long time. So tomorrow's an opportunity to get that home field advantage back at the bank, and one of our 2 wins last year was against the 49ers, but really home was not very kind to the Vikings last year, and they played a number of stinkers at home. I'm hoping this isn't going to be one of them. Another thing that's going to be interesting is that, how Brian Flores and the Mad Blitzer and all that sort of stuff. Well, last week I was trying to count it out and I didn't quite have time, but and not only the blitzing, but last year the Vikings had that odd breakdown where they blitzed almost more than anybody else, and they also rushed 3 more than anybody else. Last week against the Giants, they pretty much only rushed 4 guys, the majority of the passing downs. I didn't get a chance to count it, but they blitzed very rarely. I don't think they rushed 3 guys once. It was four guys rushing pretty much the majority of the time on Daniel Jones' 42 pass dropbacks. So I'm interested to see if that changes tomorrow, if Flores mixes it up a bit more, or whether that's going to be kind of the new blueprint for Brian Flores and the Vikings defense in 2024, where they're not dropping 8 into coverage 30 to 40% of the time like they did last year. They're not blitzing like demons 20 to 30% of the time like they did last year. They're rushing 4, kind of more of the basic, but you don't always know where those 4 guys are coming from.
I agree. Now, they showed a lot, but they didn't get a lot, but they got a lot of pressure.
Yes.
Well over 40% of pressure. That's an outstanding number. And
we know last year that even with all the blitzing they didn't actually create a ton of pressure off of that. So really encouraging that last week they did create a lot of pressure, and they only were bringing 4 as opposed to 5 or 6.
I think it's going to be great. I can't wait. It's going to be fun. And remember, live at the 2-minute warning, we're the only show that does that. Tomorrow afternoon, we'll go live at the 2-minute warning, and you all get to join us and watch the end of the game, and then we get to react. Hopefully it's celebrating, baby.
Last week, Dave, you had it easy. The game was over at the 2-minute warning. You were just like waiting for
it was casual.
Waiting for them in victory formation, right?
Yep, it was casual. I want to tell everybody that's in Minnesota or in Minneapolis right now and that is going to Skullfest, enjoy yourself tonight, but be safe by all means, and ask Rap to play Are You Ready? He does a great job singing that song, and I think you guys are going to have a blast, and I wish I was there. Our hearts are with you. We do have a representative that's going to be there. Sal, you should see Sal at some point in time tonight, and it should be fun. With that, what do we say there, brother?
We say SKOL Vikings, baby.
SKOL Vikings.
Like, subscribe, and ring the bell, and rate us on your favorite podcast aggregator. Darren and Dave, thank you for watching this episode of Two Old Bloggers. We look forward to seeing you on every show on the new Vikings First and SKOL. You can find our podcasts as part of the Fans First Sports Network. Sports takes for the fan, from the fan. SKOL, everybody!